Last December, Taylor Heinicke was preparing to take his engineering finals. Instead, he ended up having to delay them after Washington signed him to its practice squad and quickly promoted him to the active roster. He was just a kid from FCS Old Dominion that went undrafted in 2015, and all of a sudden, he had to go toe-to-toe against Tom Brady in the playoffs. The Buccaneers escaped the game victorious, but Heinicke put up a shocking performance with 4 total touchdowns, including a legendary diving score. Washington decided to bring him back to back up Ryan Fitzpatrick this season, but after Fitzpatrick went down with an injury, Heinicke was the new starter. And wow, it's been an experience. Washington had a bad start to the year, and now they've rattled off back-to-back wins against the Buccaneers and the Panthers. And Heinicke has been lights out, proving a lot of his doubters wrong and securing a spot in the league for years to come, even if it is as a backup. But first, if you want more videos like this, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a daily upload. The Taylor Heinicke experience is wild. I can't tell you how many times I've tweeted that this year. But 2 things can be true at once. 1, Taylor Heinicke is super fun to watch, but he's not the quarterback of the future. Who knows what the future looks like in Washington, but the Heinicke tenure is going to be very, very memorable, to say the least. The feeling last season, just realizing that some undrafted guy was going to be starting in the playoffs against Tom Brady was definitely concerning. But then out of nowhere, Heinicke puts up this crazy performance, and he gave Washington a real chance to win that game. And the one moment in that game that will be forever ingrained in my head. Down 8 in the 3rd quarter, the pocket collapsing, he should have never been able to get away, should have been sacked, and Heinicke instead manages to extend the play with his legs and rush up the field and dives for the pylon for a touchdown.
Hooray!
That is absolutely one of my favorite moments ever as a Washington fan. Although, to be fair, there hasn't been a lot. Without a doubt, my favorite in-person moment as a fan was about a week ago. I had been to 14 total Washington games in my life without ever seeing a win. They were 0-14. I've seen them lose to Joe Webb, Sam Darnold, Mitch Trubisky, and a number of real NFL quarterbacks. It's been a lot of misery. I was there when Alex Smith broke his leg. I've now seen Chase Young get injured and Adrian Peterson back in 2011 when he got injured. But when the schedule was released this offseason, I made sure that I got tickets to go see Brady play against Washington for what could end up being the final time. And just what a game that was. Heinicke somehow managed to outduel Brady, and he led Washington to a win. And when Antonio Gibson iced the game, well, it's safe to say that a lot of my former heartbreaks finally just got unleashed.
Oh my God!
It was a shocking win for Washington, but it represents a lot more of just a team that has finally started putting things together. The defense was supposed to be spectacular, but they've ended up being far from average to start the season. Meanwhile, Ryan Fitzpatrick was the presumed starter, but he went down with an injury before you knew it, and Heinicke had to walk into the starting spot. There wasn't a lot expected for Heinicke to actually do, but now there's this wild question of whether or not he can actually be the future in Washington. As time has gone on, he has only gotten better. In the past 2 weeks against the Bucs and Panthers, he's completed 42 of 54 passes. He has 462 yards, and he's thrown for 3 touchdowns. Taylor Heinicke really is something to watch. At times, he's the most exciting, electric player you've ever seen, and then he turns around and he's just frustrating. In the past few weeks, a lot of his normal struggles have just disappeared, but before, it was often he'd throw up a dangerous ball that would almost get picked, put his wide receiver in a bad spot to just get absolutely drilled, or overthrow the hell out of someone, which he does pretty well. That being said, a lot of the time, his awful plays are followed by something extremely extraordinary. He'll follow it up with a tight window throw or lead an amazing drive right after. Taylor Heinicke comes with the ups and downs, and you really just have to deal with it. Even his journey to the NFL has been a lot of ups and downs. In December 2020, Heinicke was finishing up his engineering degree at his alma mater, Old Dominion. He had to ask for an extension to take his exams because, he was a bit busy after Washington signed him to play on their practice squad before he was promoted to the active roster. He did get to play a little bit in Week 16 after Dwayne Haskins was benched and actually later released after the game, but it all mostly did come in garbage time. Alex Smith got healthy enough to play the next week, and he took back over starting duties, but after he was ruled out for the wild card game against the Bucs, well, here was a random undrafted quarterback who was just studying for exams, now starting against the greatest quarterback of all time, and it was an experience. Heinicke passed for 306 yards and threw 3 touchdowns and ran for 1, managing to somehow keep Washington in the game against the future champs. And 1 game was enough for Washington to give him a shot on a 2-year, $4.75 million deal. Heinicke really has been overlooked his entire life. Coming out of high school in Georgia, he was just a 2-star recruit and ultimately decided to go to Old Dominion, an FCS school in Virginia that me and Darren actually know pretty well considering we are from Virginia. Now, his time in Norfolk got off to a pretty bad start in his personal life. His dad ended up passing away when he was a freshman. Now, his dad played a really, really big role in his life, and a lot of those emotions came out when Heinicke played against the Packers this season. He did the Lambeau leap on a play that got overturned, and I know it got a lot of criticism and people thought it was funny because obviously it didn't count, but honestly, he still did the Lambeau leap. Who cares?
What?
Heinicke grew up watching the Packers with his dad and even said the last Super Bowl they watched together was when the Packers beat the Steelers back in 2010. He grew up a huge Green Bay fan, so you can also probably guess why he wears number 4. Brett Favre. Heinicke used to pretend that he was the Hall of Famer when he was a kid, and maybe he did the same thing when he was playing for the Monarchs. Heinicke stepped in and played for Old Dominion as a freshman and led them to the playoffs and had ODU ranked number 10 in the FCS en route to being named the National Freshman Performer of the Year. He was a star, and he only continued to get better. The next year, he passed for 44 touchdowns and rushed for 11 while being named the CAA Offensive Player of the Year and winning the Walter Payton Award. Over the course of his collegiate career, Heinicke passed for nearly 15,000 yards, 132 touchdowns, rushed for over 1,300 yards, and ran in 22 touchdowns. He once dominated at the collegiate level, and now he's dominating at the pro level. With the way Heinicke has played, it does bring up a better question of the perception of his career. If he were drafted, how differently does it change the narrative? He has the stats to prove that he can start, or at the very least, deserves to be in the league as a backup. He's shown promise and has continued to improve, but he was undrafted, a title that he'll never be able to escape from. But nonetheless, he has already proved many doubters wrong. Washington is still on the outside looking in of the playoff picture, but things are starting to heat up in DC. The defense appears to be finally putting it together even without their 2 stars Chase Young and Montez Sweat, and the offense is really starting to reel under Heinicke. Terry McLaurin is clearly his number 1 guy and is slowly cementing himself as one of the best in the league, but DeAndre Carter has been an interesting name that has come out of nowhere for Washington. Carter went to an FCS school along with Heinicke and went undrafted in 2015, just like Heinicke, and was off and on waived from various teams until Washington signed him in the offseason. In week 4, he finally had his first career touchdown on a long kick return. It was a huge moment, but he's gotten used to it now. In the last 3 games, he has 3 touchdown catches. He said Washington knows who they are as an offense now, and the stats back that up. Despite not having Curtis Samuel or Logan Thomas, Heinicke has flourished connecting with his other options. Now, Washington does still have a slim chance of making the playoffs, but that's more of just a testament as to how weak the NFC is. Right now, Washington is only out of the wild card by about a game. Both the Vikings and Saints are 5-5 and in the playoffs, while Washington is 4-6. So if Washington just gets hot, the playoffs aren't out of reach, and it helps with the schedule coming up. The Seahawks are on Monday, who haven't beaten a team not named the Jaguars in a month and a half. A pretty solid Raiders team comes after that, and then is the NFC NFC East gauntlet. 2 games against Dallas, 2 against Philadelphia, and 1 against the Giants to end the season. The Cowboys are very good, and they're going to win the division unless something crazy happens, but a path to the playoffs is there for Washington. The future of Taylor Heinicke is completely unknown, but one thing is for sure, Heinicke will be suiting up in the NFL for a long time. He has 1 year left on his deal in Washington, and after, who knows, maybe he is the long-term guy. Thanks for watching. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a daily upload. If you want even more content, follow us on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, and stay up to date with all things NFL all season long.